Give it a moment.
And do we have to do the string key? No?
No, 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 that's completely different. Okay, so do that. Do
Okay.
that.
All
I
right.
remember now. You looking for a microphone. It's gonna be this one.
Oh, that one? Okay, I was ready for the other one.
Okay, now you are live, but you need to maximize this. Okay, you are live now.
Good morning and welcome to Positive Vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And in case you're just tuning in, my name is Shane Nikolic, and and I'm sitting here at the VT Radio Universal Studio downtown Tacoma, bringing you positive vibes for your Sunday morning and for your week. Um, I'm just waiting for my a friend of mine is supposed to be calling in this morning for a Zoom call. Um, going to be interviewing a friend of mine who also has multiple sclerosis, as I do, and finding out, about her life with multiple sclerosis and how she's coping with it. And um, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see. Maybe she's having difficulty. Maybe she's having, I don't know. But let's see if I can get a hold of her. Um, just a second here. Let me see. Um, okay, but at any rate, while I'm waiting to find out there, um, I will just, this past week has been another phenomenal week, and just doing, just working on building up my social media brand and my podcast here. Um, I got an ad put on Facebook. I went on the Facebook ad manager or whatever and created an ad for advertising my Shane Nikolic author podcaster page I created on Facebook, which has a link to purchase my book from Amazon Kindle. And yeah, come to find out, this ad that I put on, uh, you just put the ad on Facebook ad manager, and it's also instantaneous or simultaneously advert put the ads put on Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. So that's pretty cool. Got all three bases covered at once, and just I'm still learning this whole uh, well pieces of the social media and online advertising promotion gig. Uh, getting my book out there. This is actually the first real life ad that I put out for my book, and it's just super super cool getting into all this. Uh, I heard following since I follow Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, his podcasts. I heard him say a long time ago that um, I heard him say a long time ago, that I forget how long ago this was, but he was saying that Facebook ads were the way to go, and Instagram ads, TikTok ads now, and it it's just so cool to be able to, you know, do these things. And oh yeah, back to what I was saying anyway. I should have done this a long time ago. Was put an ad on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. But I don't know. I didn't think it was that important. I figured, okay, I'll just go about it this other way. I'll just advert promote it on my Facebook, Instagram pages. My personal page, but apparently not, because I've reached, I don't know, it was saying, I looked at it this morning and it's saying I've reached like almost 7,000 or just over 7,000 people so far. And got a bunch of clicks, on my link to my Amazon page, to my books page on Amazon Kindle. Um, and yeah, it's just like super cool. uh, Getting into all this, and you watch all these. I watched all these other guys. Um, I watch all these other guys, Brendan Burchard, Gary Vaynerchuk. Some of these other inspirational, motivational speakers and authors that I follow online, on social media and what have you. And I follow them, and I see how big they've how many followers they've gotten now, how big their operation is or whatever. And I'm like, oh man, how these guys get there, and I'll just go about it this other way. I'll go about it this, the easy way. I'll go, I'll just post on my personal Facebook page and blah blah blah. There's no reason to go big and get a business page or what have you. And uh, but now that I've done that, now I see, what these guys are talking about, and, you reach a lot more people going that route. And I should have done that a long time ago, should have listened, uh, and actually put that advice into practice rather than just hearing it and saying, oh, I'll go about it a different way. Um, let's see here. Sorry, I'm just looking. I'm on my phone right now trying to uh, just a sec. Let me send a message to my friend Julie. Just a second here. Maybe something came up. I know she has a family. She has stuff going on there at the house. So, um, hoping she's all right. Um, Alrighty. Let's see. Just a second here, trying to see if she. Oops. That was a a video I did for my Facebook this morning. Um, but at any rate, yeah. Just a moment here. Not sure if this cord would have reached over there. So alrighty then. I Yeah, I figured I'd until yeah, if my friend if my friend Julie um, pops on the Zoom call, then I will. At that point, I will abandon this and switch to speaking with her. But until then, I'm going to switch gears. rather than reading out of Brennan Burchard's The Motivation Manifesto, I'm going to read out of my book, uh, Live the Passionate Life and Quit Settling for Survival. Uh, yeah, at any rate, I guess I'll start at the very beginning. Uh, of course, not the title page. Uh, no, but I see this. This just caught my eye. That's super cool, though. Copyright 2016, Shane Nicolich. Uh, that's like super cool just to see that, copyright. Me. Um, but at any rate, uh, this is my story about surviving a traumatic brain injury and being comatose for a couple of months, practicing alcoholism and drug addiction for 4 years, being in numerous accidents through the years, and now living with multiple sclerosis. I also give you, the reader, a glimpse into how I stay motivated and inspired to endure this life with a smile on my face. And before I get into it, yeah, this was written and published in 2016, and a lot has gone on since then. Life has changed dramatically, and yeah, just keep that in mind. So not everything I've written in here holds true today, but hey, it is what it is, and it was what it was. Uh, Gratitude list. Rather than having a dedication page at the beginning of my book, I opted to go with a gratitude list. Seriously speaking, I feel there are far too many people to list if I was to dedicate my book. I did not get to this point in my life purely by my own doing. I am extremely grateful to every person that has had a part in my story. If it were not for each person playing a particular part at a particular time, I may not be in the here and now. I may have ended up somewhere else, or my story may have ended earlier. I am most grateful to my higher power, whom I choose to call God, for having his plan carried out, regardless of my deviations from the obviously right way at times. At times. Apparently, he wanted me to stick around for some reason. I have been shown that it is my purpose to share my story with others so that they may become inspired and or motivated to keep going on this journey of life and to continue becoming better people. I will be forever grateful to my parents for bringing me into this world and doing their best to keep me going, even when circumstances and or my screwed up mind wanted to end the story. I am grateful to each and every one of my family members, no matter the relation. Whether it is by blood, marriage, adoption, or whatever the connection is, we are all family in the end anyway. I am grateful that I began drinking and doing drugs so soon in life, strange as that may sound, else I may never else I may have never been granted the gift of sobriety before the end of my story. I am grateful for my beautiful wife, whom I love with my entire heart and whom puts up with me on a daily basis. I am grateful for the ability to drive a car so I can get places faster, even though riding my bicycle everywhere I went was more conducive to a healthy lifestyle and more eco-friendly, even more eco-friendly at that. I am grateful for the roof over our heads because I know from experience that cold sidewalks are not very comfortable. I am grateful for our pets, 2 dogs, 4 cats, three bearded dragons, and a betta fish, for they are our kids as we are planning on having no children of our own. I am ever so grateful to all the medical professionals who have helped me heal throughout the years. I am grateful for my friends in the 12-step recovery programs that have shown me the way over the past 24 years. And this was 4 years ago, so it's now 28, working on 29 years. Um, I am grateful for my fellow MSers as they help me to live with multiple sclerosis in a much more graceful way than is the alternative. I am grateful for my coworkers who showed enthusiasm for my writing a book, especially the Cuatro Amigas, with whom I work in the kitchen at the restaurant where I'm employed. I worked with these ladies at the other location where I worked, the Puyallup location of Trapper's Sushi. Um, yeah. When it comes down to it, I am grateful for everything and everybody in my life from birth until now, for the simple fact that all of it had a part in who I am today. Thank you. With that, it's on with the show. And I wish I look at my book and I think, I wish I would have done chapters and actually titled chapters and separated it differently, but hey, whatever. Um, I was just going to go at it and not separate it at all and just, one long diatribe. But anyway, um, yeah. Okay, here we go. Uh, Page one. I was going to start my first book with a long, detailed autobiography. I have decided to keep it short since that is not the primary reason I wanted to write a book. I ran across this quote a while back. To be inspired is great, to inspire is incredible. That is why I want to write a book. I want to inspire others to greatness, to strive to carry on and be better than our circumstances may seemingly dictate us to be. Excuse me. I have I have read books by and watched videos of great motivators and inspirational speakers such as Brendon Burchard, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and Tony Robbins. There are probably more I could list, but my point is that I have been inspired by these people to keep moving forward. And now it is my turn to do the inspiring. Life has tried to put, okay, I want to stop there. This what comes to mind immediately is when Gary Vaynerchuk, flew me back to New York City, and I had my personal appointment with him in his little fishbowl office there at VaynerMedia. Um, there, yeah, yeah, I think it was there. Yeah, it was there at my appointment with him. He spoke to me um, regarding my spending time watching videos, watching these inspirational, motivational people on YouTube videos in the morning, and getting all fired up with that. And he was hinting at the fact that, that's great getting fired up by it. And it's great watching his videos getting fired up by him. But it's, what are you doing with that? How is essentially what I got from him was, how is that being productive? And so it's, now it's my turn to be on the other end of you know, me being on the videos, or writing the book or doing the inspiring. Okay, but at any rate, carrying on, life has tried to put me down and keep me there so many times, but I just keep getting back up and moving forward. Sometimes it was a downfall brought about by my own bad decision making about how to play the hand I was dealt. Other times I was simply dealt a bad hand. After all I have been through, it is obvious to me that God has a plan for me. At 40 years old, I still have no clue exactly what the precise plan is. I may never know the full details of it, but I am just going to keep moving forward in a positive direction, and maybe I will discover the full itinerary of what I was born to do. When I have shared bits and pieces of my story with people through the years, I have been told I am inspiring, have an inspiring life story. I have thought a few times about putting my story in print, but haven't done so yet. A couple of years ago, a young woman began working as a server at the restaurant where I was washing dishes. Regardless of the positive facade I was showing the world at the time, I was in one of my Eeyore states of mind and had been for a while. Woe is me. I'm never going to amount to anything. life sucks, and then you die. Why go on? That was the attitude, sort of attitude I was going in at the time. Uh, this new server had this positive vibe or aura about her that I latched onto. I awoke one morning and thought, why am I in such a dark state of negativity? Screw that noise. I have so very much to be grateful for. Negativity, exit stage left. Let the good times roll. I made a gratitude list and once again came to the realization that while my life may not be what I'd like it to be at any particular point in time, I'm still alive and not 6 feet under as of yet. So why not be grateful and positive? Some days my mind seems to be all about negative thinking, but I simply need to think about the things I am grateful for, and the negative thinking melts away. There's still days, I still have days and times when I need to remember that. But at any rate, going on, I still wash dishes at the same restaurant, and I'm sitting at home on my day off, not wanting to give in to negative thinking and limiting limited beliefs. Instead, I'm going to focus on positive thinking and unlimited beliefs. I may have limitations between having multiple sclerosis and the residual effects of a traumatic brain injury I suffered at the age of 11, but I can choose to sit here and focus on what I can't do, or I can focus on that which I can do. Focus is where it's at for me. Today, I choose to focus on being positive and productive. I have never written a book before. I only know that I have been inspired to inspire, and since I've been told that I am inspirational, I've decided to put in print what people say is inspiring so that I can inspire more people. If you follow that and you're still with me, kudos to you. I thank you for opening this book, and my hope is that when you finish reading, you thank yourself. I do want to give you an overview of what my life has been like up to this point so you have a general idea of who I am, quite possibly why I am the way that I am. So here's a glimpse, a little bit of an overview of my life. Well, a little bit, it's more like almost 50 pages, but okay, here you go. To start out with, I was born at 6:52 a.m. on the 8th of July, 1975, in Enumclaw, Washington, in a small suburb which sits on a plateau right at the base of the Cascade Mountains, with Mount Rainier about an hour's drive away. The name of the city is a Pacific Northwest Native American word, which was a mythological spirit of thunder. Some say that the name of the town means home of evil spirits, referring to either thunder or storms in the mountains to the east, or high winds blowing through the foothills of the Cascades. I have always been interested in the history of places. At any rate, now that I've started giving a history lesson instead of telling a bit about my own life, you get a glimpse of how my brain seems to be wired differently at times. Oh well, consider the history lesson a bonus. My parents dropped out of high school when I was conceived, as mom could not be pregnant and go to school. They were really picky about that back then. And dad had a son to support, so he began working full time. Well, actually, on a side note, he was pretty much working full time while going to school, high school, but then when, yeah, he just started working more. Um, got, got a better job and started working more. At any rate, a few months later, my parents having been married for a few months and finding it not working out too well, I was dropped off at my grandparents' house to live, as that was the best place for me at the time. I lived with them, my grandparents on my dad's side, until I was 3. At that time, I was moved back in at my dad's house as he and my mom were divorced a short time after I began living with my grandparents, and dad now had a girlfriend living with him, and she could care for me while he was away at work. Okay, that I obviously didn't edit that. I obviously needed to edit better. But at any rate, They got married when I was 4, at which wedding I was the ring bearer, and we moved to the neighboring town of Black Diamond shortly after. I went to kindergarten there in Black Diamond. When the school tested me before the school year started, they said they thought I should have started in first grade, but my parents thought I should stick with kids my own age. On a side note, I was fluently reading the Seattle Times and Seattle PI at the age of 3. Uh, and I remember sitting there with my grandpa doing that. Um, my dad was and still is in the power line construction trade, so his job moves around a lot. The union he belongs to is the IBEW, which abbreviation its members explain as "I've been everywhere," when it actually stands for International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. He was transferred to a job up north, so we moved to Everett after the school year, and I attended first grade at Madison Elementary. I don't recall why, but we moved to a duplex a few blocks away the next summer. There was a huge weeping willow tree in the backyard, and I began my interest in tree forts. My dad even built me a log tent fort on the side of the duplex, which I named Fort Comanche. Uh, I remember that was a super cool place, super cool fort. I spent this summer out there one summer, supporting myself with a Kool-Aid stand out front of the house. We lived on a sort of busy street, and I'd go to the Army surplus place down the street and get supplies, and the store across the street for food. Um, I'd either go with food from the store, cans of soup or whatever, make mac and cheese, what have you, on my Sterno stove that I got at the Army surplus place, or I'd eat Army rations that I got there. Um, okay, anyway, back to the story. We lived there for about 3.5 years, during which time I was in the gifted program at Bee Ridge Elementary for second through the middle of fifth grade. I do believe I was in the fourth grade when my little brother Travis was born on January the 7th, 1985. I was so happy to have a baby brother. At any rate, we moved back to Enumclaw and stayed with some family members for the remainder of fifth grade. I finished out fifth grade at Southwood Elementary there in the Claw. As soon as the school year ended, we moved again for what would hopefully be the last time, since my parents decided to buy a house over by Lake Tapps. Everything was going great in the new house, figuring I had made 3 new friends as soon as we moved into the neighborhood. Yeah, there were 2 kids that lived behind me, Matt and Pete, and another kid that lived next door, Bruce. And we were all three. I started hanging out with them, and we were just, yeah, having lots of fun, uh, climbing trees in the green belt or whatever. Um, we even had a little party on my birthday. Actually, it was, yeah, just 4 of us, um, 4 of us kids. My new friends and I were together all the time, riding our bikes in the streets, playing video games, or climbing trees in the greenbelt behind our houses. 6 days later, the good times came to an end. On July 14th, 1986, my stepmom was trying to clean the house and was still working on getting everything unpacked from having just moved in. Uh, I was being your average 11-year-old boy, being rambunctious and causing her to not be able to focus her attention on what she was trying to do and take care of Travis at the same time. She gave me the last piece of my birthday cake and told me that when I was done eating it to go outside and play. I went straight to the greenbelt and started climbing trees with my buddies as we were searching for the perfect spot to build a tree fort. The next thing I knew, I was coming to lying in a bed at Orchard Park Nursing Home in Tacoma on September 9th, nearly 2 months later. And uh, on a side note, I know the 2 dates there, July 14th uh, and September 9th are not 2.5 months apart, but I've been told that I was technically deemed comatose for 2.5 months, but apparently I was somewhat functional. Uh, okay, but going on. I asked my nurse where my parents were. She called them and they rushed right down to see me. I forget who told me, but I found out that I had fallen from a tree and had been comatose. I am not sure how hard it was to hear what I was saying at that time, since a tracheotomy had been performed on me right after the fall from the tree and I still had the tube in my throat, but I was somehow being understood. My stepmom had worked as a secretary and knew that I had also worked with typewriters and computers, so she drew up a keyboard and printed out a few basic words on a piece of paper and put a clear plastic cover on it. This enabled me to communicate by pointing at a piece of paper rather than straining my throat so bad. I had to do all of my pointing with my right hand, as my left was almost non functioning at the time, due to the fact that my entire left side had been paralyzed while I was in the coma. Over the next couple of weeks, I attended physical therapy to try and regain my ability to walk, as I was confined in my wheelchair when I was allowed to get out of my bed. Also, somewhere toward the end of the first couple of weeks after I awoke, the tube was removed from my throat. What a relief that was. I still had the feeding tube in my gut, as the doctor had advised that my throat required more time to heal properly before I ate and drank anything the regular way. Um, when I was being transferred to Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup for rehab, my parents opted to drive me there rather than pay another bill for a simple transport that was just a few miles away. I still remember thinking, while riding alone in the back of our 1986 Chevy Monte Carlo, that I was on my way home, even though I had been told that I was in fact going to a hospital. I thought I was going home at that moment, so I proceeded to pull the feeding tube out of my gut, stitches and all. Fortunately, there was a fat stack of napkins in the car, and some were pressed against the spot where the tube had been ripped from as a precaution until we got to Good Sam and the tube was reattached. I still to this day remember my stepmom, Donna, reaching into the glove box super fast, getting this as my dad's driving, uh, getting the napkins out of the glove box, and my stepmom reached back and held the napkins against my gut until we got to Good Sam. And yeah, that was a trip. Um, it was pretty cool that the hospital was right across the street from Puyallup Fair. Since my parents got me out a couple times on day passes to go to the fair, I was a patient there at the hospital for over a month, being immersed in intense physical, occupational, and speech therapies. Well, actually, the speech therapy only lasted a short time. Getting used to my throat, just getting used to talking once again, without, once with the feeding tube taken out and the scar tissue healing up, that, dealing with that. And also, coming out of the coma and making sure everything's a-okay. Um, Going on. I do remember my speech therapist, but not much about her, other than the fact that she was helping me to make sure my speech was good after having a tube stuffed down my throat for a couple of months. I will never forget my occupational and physical therapist. They never gave up on me, no matter how much I wanted to throw in the towel at times, always there supporting me to keep making progress. Still to this day, still to this day, I hear my physical therapist telling me, I don't want to hear you say, I can't. Instead, say, I will try harder, Master Larry. He knew I was a Star Wars fan and would understand his paraphrasing the words of Yoda, Jedi Master. It worked because I was out of the wheelchair in about a month, except when I had to go to therapy, since I was not cleared to be out of the chair all the time. We just kept that away from him at that time. Um, the wheelchair and the house with thick shag carpet didn't go well together, I so my parents let me out of the wheelchair at the house. A lot easier getting around that way. And then when I went to physical therapy, brought the wheelchair, and of course I was in the wheelchair when I went into physical therapy. Okay, moving on. I was discharged from Good Samaritan Hospital on October 31st, 1986. I was still in my wheelchair when I first got home, and it was nearly impossible not having my full strength back in my arms as of yet to get around the house by myself. Wheelchairs and thick shag carpet do not mix. It did help me to gain some strength back in my arms, but more so, it strengthened my resolve to walk again and get rid of that godforsaken chair. After I had been home for about 2 or 3 weeks, a tutor started coming to my house 3 or 4 times each week, preparing me for my return to school. I started back to school in January 1987, right where I should have been, in the middle of sixth grade, at the school my stepmom had enrolled me in a few days before my accident. Apparently, the traumatic brain injury was not as traumatic as it could have been since I passed sixth grade in one semester. The next year at the junior high, I was in all standard seventh grade classes except for social studies. I was in the remedial social studies class, and I did well in it. It is strange how a brain injury affects the way it works. I ended up taking first place in the Sumner's at the I ended up taking first place in the seventh grade level of the spelling bee for both Lakers Junior High and Sumner School District. For my that year, for my skill was lacking. Yet my skill was lacking when it came to social studies. Go figure. Um, After I won the spelling bee at the district level, I was the subject of an article in the Tacoma News Tribune, which highlighted my spelling bee win, along with the facts of all I had been through in the previous year. That newspaper article spurred another local paper to run the article, and the called the house. Uh, an elderly woman called the house from Retzel Veterans Home in Port Orchard, saying she had something to give me. My stepmom had said when she was being interviewed for the article in the newspaper that if she could give me anything after all I had been through, she would give me a Purple Heart. The lady from the Veterans Home bestowed upon me her belated husband's Purple Heart that he was awarded posthumously. The article in the Tacoma News Tribune was read by a guy who was working for Cairo 7 News as they were in Puyallup that afternoon, working for an article for the local news on TV that evening. Uh, Consequently, they came to my school and did an article on me, even shooting some footage of me playing softball as I was in PE when they got to the school. I even got to go home early that day as a reporter. Um, it was, yeah, as the reporter wanted to do a clip of my home and the greenbelt where the accident occurred. Um, yeah, the reporter was Chris Lagueros. I was looking here a while back to possibly do an update article on Cairo 7, and the reporter who did, I found out through doing some looking around online that the reporter Chris Lagueros passed away from complications of cancer. Passed away from cancer a few years ago now, and I had seen him just about a year prior to that happening. I had seen him in downtown Seattle. I was walking uh, to my MS specialist's office and saw him walking on the street, walking on the sidewalk. He was going to do an article or whatever. Okay, moving right along. Um, the attention from the local news spurred newspaper coverage across the country, even garnering the attention of a nationally renowned news radio personality. I was a celebrity. Ha ha. What goes up must come down, and after the positive comes the negative. That same year, I started smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, and doing drugs. Experts say that after a person suffers a brain injury, they will most likely lose their inhibitions. That was definitely true for me. Between the brain injury and ever increasing moments of intoxication, about a month after the spelling bee, I got a bright idea after taking notice of the electrical outlet on the floor directly below my desk in reading class. During SSR, or silent sustained reading, one day, I attempted to short circuit the school, lowering a large paper clip, which I had straightened out and folded over a pencil, into the outlet. Everyone was staring at books on their desks, the students reading, and the teacher correcting their prior work. The way I had it figured, if it indeed worked out the way it went in my mind, the school would be without power for at least a couple of days, and it would be closed until they figured out the problem. Uh, yeah, until they figured out the problem and got the power back on. As soon as the two ends of the paper clip touched the inside of the outlet, sparks came up a few inches, as opposed to the teacher's insistence. The sparks rose halfway to the ceiling and immediately caught the attention of the teacher while the lights flickered at the same instant. I saw sparks and reflexes pulled my arm back up, lifting the pencil, which pulled the paperclip out of the outlet. The teacher wrote up a slip that kicked me out of school for 90 days and sent me to the office to get the vice principal's signature on the slip as well. I went to the office and talked with the vice principal for a while, and after he called and spoke to my stepmom for a bit, I walked out of his office with a slip warranting me to 1 day of in-school suspension, 1 day of in-house in place of 90 days in the outhouse. Yeah, I worded that wrong, but you know what I mean. 1 day of in-school suspension as opposed to 90 days out of school suspension. Um, of course, I willingly spent 1 day in a portable doing schoolwork along with a few other troublemakers. Trust me when I tell you that it was better than being stuck at home for 90 days, unable to go anywhere because I would have been grounded the entire time. And you know what that means, listening to your parents yap at you the whole time about what you did and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, anyway, going on. I can go on for a few more minutes. I made it through the remainder of seventh grade and started eighth grade in the fall. My grade point average was 3.012 at the end of the first quarter of eighth grade. That would be the highest it would get until the last couple of years of high school. Most of my junior high and high school days were spent doing just enough schoolwork to get by, sneaking out with buddies to smoke cigarettes and or get drunk, high, tripping, pretty much anything to get to utopia. I started stealing cigarettes to support my habit from stores and from my parents' packs lying around the house. I ran away from home too many times to count. A couple of times I ran away with friends, but most of the time I would go by myself. I had my fair share of encounters with trouble at home, at school, and with the law. On my third or fourth time running away, I went with a friend who lived a couple of houses away from mine. We got separated, and I could not find him at one point, so I started freaking out. We had been loitering around a strip mall for a couple of hours. Somehow we got separated, and I didn't know whether to go or let him catch up later or wait around for him. I ended up hanging out on the property next door to the strip mall where I had a good view of the whole place so that I could see my friend should he reappear. I saw a police car pull up to the mall, and I was not going to stick around to find out what was going on, so I just took off walking down Highway 99, which is the main road in the area. I got thinking and decided that I was screwed. I had no money. I had no money. My friend was MIA. Come to find out the next day, that police car that had pulled up to the mall to pick him up because he had been caught stealing something. Um, yeah, that song by Jane's Addiction, "Been Caught Stealing," comes to mind. But anyway, cue that music. The sun had gone down. It had been a warm fall day, but after the sunset, the temperature dropped fast and I was chilled to the bone. Scared and shivering, I stepped into a phone booth and called home. Collect call, of course. My dad talked to me for about 10 minutes and I reassured him that I would stop running away from home. He told me to go into the IHOP. International House of Pancakes that was in the parking lot where I was calling from, order something to eat, and he would come pick me up. He knew right where I was at because he had driven past it tons of times on his way to work when he had worked on a job site in the area. Okay, I'll go a little bit more. I would love to be able to tell you that I stopped running away and started being a totally obedient child, but I kept it up and continued being a bad kid. I could recount the multitude of stories of my days as a teenage alcoholic drug addict, drinking, doing drugs, smoking cigarettes, stealing, running away from home, etc., etc. Instead, I'll shorten it up by simply stating that none of it, oh, simply state, instead, I'll shorten it up by simply stating that none of the drugs, booze, cigarettes, stealing, running away, none of it made me feel better in the long run. It all just left me feeling like crap. I finally reached my bottom when I was 16. After spending 4.5 years in a self-imposed prison of booze, drugs, and quote unquote good times, I found myself looking down into a bottomless pit, which was the remainder of my life, if I kept doing the stupid things I had been doing. After having a spiritual awakening and thinking about my life, where I was actually going instead of where I would like to be going, I came to the conclusion that should I have carried on the way I was going, I was and am still positive that I would have ended up dead or locked up forever in a day. I sent out a 911 prayer and asked God to please help me out of the bind I was in at the time. And in return, I would never drink again. I would never drink alcohol or do drugs again. I remained dry. Okay, I remained dry, no alcohol or drugs for 9 or 10 months, and I got to the point where I had to make a decision. I had already made the decision to be clean and sober. I had already made the decision to be clean and sober. I was not about to turn back to my previous existence, which was simply a life of intoxicated and troubled actions with good-natured intentions mixed in. I was in a depressive mood in which I was feeling trapped with no route of escape. Looking back, I can see that I had been depressive since my brain injury, but I just self-medicated with alcohol and drugs, so I was never diagnosed as such. On this particular afternoon, however, I came up with the idea that since I wasn't going back to the alcohol and drugs, I would just kill myself. This would not only end my personal problems, but also the problems of those near to me that I was a constant disappointment to. That is where my twisted mind was at that time, anyway. I was sunk so deep inside my depression I could not see the forest for the trees, and I figured that suicide was logically the simplest solution. Obviously, the Suicide King was not even in my hand since a whole different hand was played that night. Okay, one more paragraph and then I gotta go. I got a couple of God shots that night, both being suggestions that I go to a 12-step meeting. At the first suggestion from my mom, I thought, okay, I will go just to suffice my mom. My mom had been an active member of this program for many moons, as my stepdad was also. A few months earlier, I had moved in with them, as I had just returned from what was to be my last trip running away, and my house was in turmoil. The second suggestion that I get my butt to a meeting came from my doctor. When my mom had asked me why I was looking so depressed right before I was going to kill myself, I let the floodgates swing open and told her everything on my mind, exactly how I felt about the situation and what I was about to do. When we got to my doctor's appointment, which I would have missed had I gone through with killing myself, I opened up and told my doctor everything I had told my mom earlier that evening. When I had finished speaking, he immediately spun around in his chair and proceeded to pull a little book out of the middle drawer of his desk. I recognized the book right away as Mom had a copy of it in her truck. It was a schedule for the local 12-step meetings. My doctor opened it up by chance to the right page and said, "There's a young people's meeting starting in town in about 15 minutes. You had better get out of here so you can make it on time." I think in exact terms, exact quote, he said, "Get the hell out of here and so you can get there on time." But anyway, I'll meet you there. I had thought I would just go along with the first suggestion just to appease my mom. But after the second suggestion was given to me within an hour of the first one, I took that as a sign that going to my first meeting was part of the master plan. Yeah, and I got to stop there since it's time to wrap up. And so I'll wrap up. And yeah, I next week, hopefully, well, actually, next week, my scheduled guest, I won't say who it is, um, but I will just maybe give a clue and say that I've wanted her on my podcast since I started this. I just haven't asked her as of yet. And I this weekend I couldn't uh, couldn't get her on my podcast because she's in another state running a race. And yeah, at any rate, my guest next week. I can't wait to have her on my podcast. Yeah, she's a super lady, and yeah, super inspirational, motivational lady, and that's all I'm going to say. And I can't wait. Um, I'm excited. But at any rate, yeah, and at that rate, I guess I'll just wrap it up and say thank you for listening in or watching if you're watching this. And yeah, another week has gone by, another podcast. So, yay. At any rate, stay kind, optimistic, and grateful, my friends, family, whoever you are, whoever's listening, whoever's watching. And have a great week. And I will see you next Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific. All right. Thank you. Ciao.